Hey guys, welcome again. Looks like it's another week of This Week in Appalachian History, and boy, hard to believe this is the third one. It feels like it's been 3 days instead of 3 weeks, but so I hope your life is going by just a little bit slower than mine is. It's like, shoo, I need a time out here or hit the brakes or something, but I guess we'll just keep rolling. Wanted to give a shout out to a few people this week too that supported us. We got a couple of new patrons. We got Mike Adams and Sean Hanna. So thank you guys both for joining up to be monthly donors through our Patreon page, which I'll have in the comment section here if anybody else wants to join up for that. We've got a few exclusive videos that we put up there. I know got one from Christmas in Matewan, a little shot of Dorton overlooking a holler, and then we got, I want to be putting up this week, if I hadn't already, putting up about Santa's Land Park. I didn't get to go in it, but I went on the outside. If you've never seen that, it's kind of a cute little thing to look at. Hopefully I'll get to go back this summer and do a better post about it, but that's what we got for now. But good things to check out, and we'll start be doing a few more exclusive things on there. So I want to get to that, and again, Mike Adams, Sean Hanna, Vicki Murphy, and Mark Golson. Thank you all so much. Vicki Murphy and Mark Golson made very generous donations, and I really want to appreciate you guys too. And like I say every time, is that it's not just the financial support, which is fantastic and allows me to do what I do, but it also means a lot to know people support me, and that they really hope that we keep on trucking and doing what we've been doing so far. So thank you so much. Again, you can donate Patreon, and that's a monthly thing, or we do PayPal, Zelle. I'll find a way to take your money if you want to give it to me, but if you want to do a one-time donation, that's awesome. And like I said, I put that in the comments every time, so you can find that if that's something you're interested in doing. Also like to share, didn't get any mail this week. Didn't even get an email this time. It was more of a message on Facebook, but I did want to read this because I like to share these with folks because it means a lot to me, and I want to give a shout out to them. And this came from a lady named Laura Nowak. I think that's how you pronounce your last name. Laura, N-O-W-A-K. I think it's Nowak. But she sent a message in, and I wanted to read that to you guys too because it really meant a lot to me. Hi Shane, I haven't been on your site for a while and I had missed it. I just been going through a big rough patch. I lost my husband last June from blood clots, and now I lost my 60-year-old brother from COVID. I joined your site quite a few years ago, and I lived in Mississippi for a lot of years, but I moved to Wisconsin to be near family. Anyway, I just wrote to you to let you know that I really enjoy this page. It helps me feel better, and I really enjoy the history on stuff. Please keep up the great work you do. So Laura, that really means the world to me. I appreciate that, and that's another one of those things where, you know, sometimes I'm doing these and I'm like, is this some kind of vainglorious thing that I'm just trying to do? And then I realize, you know what? If it entertains people and gives them something to ease their mind for just a few minutes, or entertain them, or make them laugh, or make them cry, or do something, have something to get your mind off of a lot of the grind of the day-to-day work, then I'm really happy and proud to do it, because like I said, it takes a lot of time. I hate to steal a line from the late, great James Brown, but you know, he's the hardest working man in show business. I'm the hardest working man in Appalachia, I'm telling you. I go out and do these videos. I go out and travel all the time. I got 3 kids. I got a full-time job I work 50 or 60 hours a week on, and I just don't have time to sleep anymore. I've ruled that out. I figure I can do that when I'm dead, but so that's why it means the world to me when I get that kind of feedback. It's like truly like giving me energy. It's like throwing coal in a furnace. It keeps me burning and going, so I appreciate that. So Laura, thank you. Really means a lot that people take the time to do that. I think about how quick people are to complain, but they're very seldom like to give praise or good feedback or anything positive. So I really appreciate that, more than you'll know. And thank you guys, all y'all. So, and thank you for watching. Whatever you do to support us, subscribing. If you even, I appreciate it if you consider subscribing to this channel. That helps a lot too. Just shows the support and makes YouTube throw our videos out to more people. So if you can do that, that would be great too. Or if you just decide to not unsubscribe, I'd appreciate that. So with that, I will get into this week's history, and I'll start with January the 25th. So again, this is starting with January the 25th, and what I love about this week is there's a lot of people that I really wasn't familiar with, and I don't think you will be either, but they have really great backstories, and that makes it interesting, because I think last week we had Dolly Parton and, of course, Stonewall Jackson, who everybody's familiar with. But these are a lot of people that probably their story's not as well known as it could be or should be. And so I'm glad to be able to tell that right here, and hopefully inspire some of you to check these folks out a little bit more, maybe even do some work on them, because I think a lot of them have stories that may not have been told as much as they should be. So I'll start off with Pearl Pace. She was born on January 25th in 1896 in Tompkinsville, Kentucky. And she was originally a school teacher and a businesswoman. And her husband was the sheriff of Cumberland County. He was the sheriff from 1933 to 1937, but he could not succeed himself in that role. So they got the bright idea that she would run for sheriff. And son of a gun, she won. And they were fighting rum runners and all kinds of stuff back then. It was kind of, if you know anything about Appalachia, especially during Prohibition and that era, or in Great Depression and all that, there was a lot of illegal moonshining and so forth going on to make money, and it's pretty much organized crime operations. You think of the mafia and that type of thing, but boy, those moonshiners, they weren't nobody to mess with back then, especially when the prices were so high. So, but anyway, Pearl Pace, she got earned the nickname of Pistol-Packin Pearl. Now that's doesn't get any cooler than that. Her husband's name was Stanley Dan Pace, and like I said, he was the sheriff, but he passed away a little bit after all that, and she ended up raising her children and served as sheriff and doing all kinds of things, and she was quite accomplished. She ended up being a good friend of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he actually appointed her to the War Claims Commission, and she ended up being the third highest ranking female in his administration. So, she was a big deal in her time. So I'm glad that we were able to talk a little bit about Pistol-Packin Pearl Pace. And she passed away in 1970. Also on this day, let's see, in 1942, Carl Eller was born, and he was a first-round draft pick in 1964. He played for the Minnesota Vikings from 1964 to 1978, and then he played another year for the Seattle Seahawks. He ended up getting in the Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame in 2004, and the College Hall of Fame in 2006, and he was a six-time Pro Bowler. He was born in Winston-Salem and went to school there. Ended up going to college at Minnesota, but he had a long, lengthy NFL career and did some drug counseling and so forth after he retired from football. And another person born on this day was Edward Pearson Sr., and this is a name I was not familiar with, but should be. He was born in 1872, and he was born in Burke County, North Carolina. He served as a Buffalo soldier during the Spanish-American War, which was a pretty neat backstory. Then he moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and started developing Burton Street and Parkview, which were residences targeting the African-American community. He worked with Rutherford Platt Hayes, who was a son of President Rutherford B. Hayes, in working on those developments. He was quite the businessman. He operated a general store, started an insurance company, and he had a mail-order shoe business at one time. And he was known to be the black mayor of West Asheville. He was a very prominent, one of the first really wealthy and successful black entrepreneurs in this part of the country. So he was had a sterling reputation for business, and so he was very revered in that area, especially for his work in the African American community. He died in 1946, but in 2014 a mural was painted on the Burton Street Community Center to honor him. So quite the accomplished man, and someone I wasn't familiar with until I started this. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about him. And last but not least on this day was the birth of Dr. Thomas Walker. While he wasn't born in the area, he explored Kentucky in 1950, which was 19 years before Daniel Boone did. So he was all over. His fingerprints and footprints really are all over Southwest Virginia and Eastern Kentucky. And he was actually the person that named the Cumberland Gap. And he named it after Prince William Augustus, who was the Prince of Cumberland, or the Duke of Cumberland, I'm sorry, not the Prince. He was the Duke of Cumberland in England, and so that's where that came from. And he is credited with being the first to discover and use coal in Kentucky. So he had a lot of things to do with the development of this part of the country. Of course, the Cumberland Gap is the gateway to the west, and there's the Thomas Walker High School down in Lee County that was named in his honor. So he's another guy that probably doesn't get nearly as much acclaim as he should get locally, but he definitely had a huge impact that is still being felt even today. Moving to January the 26th, there was the birth of Walt Barnes. He was nicknamed Piggy because he I guess he caught a piglet when he was a little boy and got that nickname. And you have to earn a name like Piggy. But he was born in 1918 in Parkersburg, West Virginia. He was also known for being a great football player. He played for 4 years for the Philadelphia Eagles from 1948 to 1951. But then he moved into acting, and he was actually friends with Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, and Kirk Douglas. And probably his biggest roles you know him for mostly were television. I think he was in John Wayne's Rio Bravo, I believe it was, movie. But he was also in he had a very minor role in that. He was also on television series Gunsmoke. He was on even the Dukes of Hazzard, believe it or not. And so he was pretty well known, more of a character actor, I guess, but he was had a long, lengthy acting career, so wanted to mention him for sure. And he passed away in 1998. Also on that day was the unfortunate death of a lady named Grace Moore, who was born in Del Rio, Tennessee, and then Cock County. She perished in an airplane crash on that day in Copenhagen, and she was actually with a prince of Sweden, a guy named Gustav Adolf from Sweden, and they perished together in that plane crash. She was a very noted and acclaimed soprano singer and an actress, and she was known as the Tennessee Nightingale. Well, the person I wasn't familiar with till I heard this, but I looked up some pictures of her too. Beautiful lady, and quite the backstory there. On January the 27th, something called the Bascom Affair happened, and that was a man named George Bascom, who was from Owingsville, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Owingsville, in Kentucky. He was in Bath County, Kentucky. It was a confrontation between the Apache Indians and the Americans that took place in 1861, just a little bit before the Civil War. And there was a big dispute where the Apache Indians took a few prisoners, and the Americans did it in return to them. That happened to be the brother and two nephews of Cochise, the name that should be familiar to anyone who has any kind of familiarity with Native American history. So there was a back and forth there. Cochise really wanted them to release the nephews and brother, and of course they did not want to do that without getting something in return, which was a young boy that Cochise was holding hostage. And it ended up that Bascom ordered the hanging of Cochise's brother and nephews. Well, this went over like a crocheted bathtub, as you can imagine. And Cochise, who at that point had more of a hostility toward the Mexicans, began to hate the Americans, and this really launched what's the next 25 years of what became the Apache Wars. And so that's called the Bascom Affair, and that did not end well for anybody, unfortunately. So I do want to mention that did occur on January the 27th. Moving on to the next day. Every week I get brain dead about this time during this, as you can tell. I'll come back out of it at some point. I'll snap out here. Just hang with me. And also, every week I have a favorite story that I just can't wait to get to. Last week it was the Cobra Kai. This week it is a man by the name of John Davis Chandler, and that's going to be very obvious why I love it in here in just in a second. But John Davis Chandler was born in 1935 in Hinton, West Virginia, and which Hinton I do believe is in Summers County. He was an actor, and he had tons and tons and tons of roles on all kinds of television shows. I mean, they spanned from Gunsmoke to Columbo to Quincy M.E. to Murder, She Wrote to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. None of that, though, adds up to my favorite role of his, which was he played a bounty hunter in the movie The Outlaw, Josey Wales, and that's it might be my favorite movie ever. It's if not, it's right up there. It's in the top 3 anyway, top 5. I love Jaws, love Rocky. I don't know, but I love The Outlaw, Josey Wales. I'll watch it anytime I get a chance. And there's a scene in here, and it is a great scene. You can actually look it up on YouTube after this if you so inclined, because it only lasts a minute and a half or something like that. But he is a bounty hunter, and he goes in and he walks in the saloon looking for Josey Wales. And so, him and Josey have an exchange, and Josey Wales asks, "You a bounty hunter?" And he said, "Man's got to do something for a living." And that's when Clint Eastwood gives the most awesome line probably in the history of Clint Eastwood awesome lines. And that's saying a heck of a lot, This is the man that was Dirty Harry and all that. But he says, "Dying ain't much of a living, boy." That's a killer line. Dying ain't much of a living, boy. And this ain't necessary. You can just ride on. Well, the bounty hunter walks out, and everybody starts getting relieved. It's like, whew, with the bartender, and all these people calm down, and they get, thinking, okay, maybe this ain't so bad after all. But then just a few seconds later, you hear those doors swing back open, and he says, the John Davis Chandler character says, I had to come back. And Clint Eastwood says, I know. And they draw on each other, and of course, the outlaw Josey Wales guns him down, and he falls out the saloon out into the middle of the street dead. So it was a man that was just a tense, beautiful part of that movie. Like I said, if you want to watch that clip, you go, I had to come back is all you have to type in, or Josey Wales, I had to come back, and it'll come right up, and you can watch that clip. But gosh, it is powerful stuff. Moving right along, much as I don't want to. Like I said, talk about the outlaw Josey Wales all day, but pretty much all that relates to Appalachian history, I guess. January the 29th. And Mr. Chandler passed away in 2010, unfortunately. I'd like to have met him. Would have been a good guy to know. January the 29th in 1955, a boxer named Big John Tate was born. He was born in Arkansas, but he really made his name in Knoxville, Tennessee. He fought out of the stable of Ace Miller, very well-known boxing trainer around these parts. And he had a really big run of champions and contenders. He had Big John Tate, he had Bernard Taylor, he had all kinds of guys that passed through that gym. Bernard, the BT Express Taylor, I need to mention that. But so Big John Tate fought for and won the heavyweight championship. In 1979, he went to South Africa in front of 80,000 people, and he decisioned Jerry Coetzee, who was a South African heavyweight, which was, going over there and getting a win. He must have clearly beat him. I don't remember that. I was a little too young to, I think I watched it, but I still don't know what was going on. And so he became the WBA champion. Unfortunately, he lost it just 5 months later. He was stopped by, he was dominating Mike Weaver, but I remember Mike Weaver fighting very well, and he was a super puncher, and he caught Big John Tate and knocked him out. But I think Mike Weaver was known as the Black Hercules. He had the physique. It was like built like a Greek god, as they say. So Mike Weaver pulled a stunning upset there on that one. He was also an Olympic bronze medalist. He lost to the famed Cuban heavyweight Teofilo Stevenson. He was knocked out in the quarterfinal round in the 1976 Olympics, which was stacked too. It was the Olympics that had Sugar Ray Leonard, it had Howard Davis Jr., had all kinds of, it was like the greatest boxing team in history by most acclaims. Unfortunately, Big John Tate passed away in 1998 in a car wreck. He had a stroke after the car wreck, from what I understand. He passed away at the young age of 43. But his boxing record was 34 wins, 3 defeats, and 23 knockouts. So he was definitely a solid guy and super nice dude, from what I understand too. Matter of fact, I talked to a local boxer named Barry Audia. It's been a couple, 2-3 years ago now, through TAP actually. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he went to South Africa and watched that fight with Big John Tate. So you can imagine what that environment was like. You're in South Africa during apartheid and all that stuff. It had to be a wild, unusual experience for somebody from Appalachia. So from Barry Audia's from Pennington Gap. So he got to go over there and experience that, which had to be phenomenal. But I think he had a lot of complimentary things to say about Big John Tate too as a person. Moving on from that, we'll get to January the 30th. A man named Carwood Lipton was born, and he was born in Huntington, West Virginia in 1920. He served in the Easy Company, and that's famed of the Band of Brothers series on HBO, which was great. I actually met Shifty Powers that was on that. He was an awesome guy too, and those guys were just, if you've watched that series, and if you haven't, so worth it. Go buy the DVDs or whatever you can do to watch that, because it is fantastic. He was in the Easy Company. He served in the Battle of Normandy, the Operation Market Garden, and the Battle of the Bulge, among others. And but he was portrayed by Donnie Wahlberg, interestingly enough, in the Band of Brothers. So he got lucky. He drew a pretty big star to play him. He passed away in 2001, unfortunately. But he was definitely a World War II hero and a man that we're proud to claim as our own. Here's another one of my favorite stories. I hadn't heard of this gal, but boy, I wish I had. There is a lady named, her professional name was Evelyn West. She was born in 1921. He was born Amy Mae Coomer, I do believe. Amy Mae Coomer, 1921, in Adair County, Kentucky. And she went on to be famous burlesque. She's a burlesque legend, from what I understand. And she had a couple of nicknames I'll get to here in a minute. But her breasts were insured through Lloyd's of London for $50,000. So that tells you what she was making money off of. Forget about Dolly Parton. Let's go with Evelyn West here. But her nicknames, one of them was the Hubba Hubba Girl. Okay, that's okay. But this is the $1 million one. She was also known as Evelyn $50,000 Treasure Chest West. She tried to change her name to that legally and wasn't successful, but she's going to be Evelyn $50,000 Treasure Chest West, or $50,000 Treasure Chest West. Those $50,000 back in her day, that's a lot of money. Those breasts, man. Whew. She's also known for throwing a tomato at a rival too. So she was a real character from everything I've read about her. And hopefully, maybe there's more out there. She definitely needs a documentary or a biography of some sorts. Unfortunately, she also passed away in 2004. But yeah, so she's tough to follow up. And here's on the last day, January 31st, we got Joanne Drew. She was born in 1922 in Logan, West Virginia, and she was an actress. She she appeared in Red River. She wore a yellow ribbon, and a couple other movies. All the King's Men is another one you might be familiar with. And probably more known for her brother. She was actually the sister to Peter Marshall, longtime game show host, who was also from West Virginia. So I thought those were interesting. But that pretty well wraps up this week. And again, if you made it this far, you deserve like a pack of donuts or something. I appreciate you guys watching, and I love when somebody tells me they watched to the end. I'm like, wow, at least it's kind of like a Sunday school meeting or something. If I can get 3 people to the end, I'm doing pretty happy. But no, I'm just kidding. I do appreciate you guys. I love all the feedback, and this is fun for me. I just love researching this stuff because I uncover all kinds of stuff I didn't know, and I figure if I don't know it, some of you don't know it either. So if you do know it, you may know more than me, then you can put in the comments and add some stuff to it too, which makes it great. So that's what I love. Anyway, thank you guys, and hope you have a great next week, and I'll probably see you in another day, which will be a week, but in my world it'll be a day. I'm like doggy years or something. Every day is 7 days in my world. But anyway, hope you guys have a great week. Thanks.